Hello and welcome into the 6th edition of Catching Up with Clutch Sports Media. Today we're joined by perhaps the foremost authority on Illinois high school sports in the entire state. It's Chicago Sun-Times prep sports editor, Michael O'Brien. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Great to be here, guys. Exciting to see somebody starting up a new high school sports coverage endeavor in the state.
We appreciate that. And obviously, I think the place to start is the recent developments with the IHSA. You've been right on top of it on Twitter. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have your Twitter notifications on as of late, trying to keep up with all this. What do you think inspired this recent change of heart by the IDPH in the governor's office?
It was so strange. I woke up I'd gotten tipped off. I knew that the governor was going to talk about high school sports. I knew that the night before. So at Thursday night, I had no idea what he was going to say. I mean, we assumed it was going to be negative because all we'd ever heard was all this stuff. I'd heard that the IHSA had basically given up and the governor changing his mind. So I woke up on Friday morning and I got the whole shell of a story ready with a picture and everything and a headline for the high school sports, basketball and football are being canceled. No high-risk sports would be allowed. I wrote the story up and then I waited. I almost called a couple of coaches I know well to get reaction to have in there ready to go ahead of time because, they trust me that I won't put it out, if it doesn't happen. So I didn't go that far. I said, we can wait and see. And so then I, fire up the Pritzker press conference and it started weird. He started out optimistically where he mentioned basically everything is new now under the Biden administration. All these steps are going. And I did get the thought, well, this is kind of a weird start to a press conference where he might cancel sports to act like everything. But I still didn't know. I thought, maybe they'll just announce something little. And then it just kept staying kind of positive. And then he said, here's Dr. Ezike. And she comes up and totally buries the lead. I don't know if you saw it, but she starts talking about this and that, and then happens to mention that all sports will be allowed. Doesn't say basketball, doesn't say football. And they've been so clunky with their communication throughout this that most of us watching, you could even see the reaction on Twitter, were like, she probably didn't know what she just said. So the thought kind of was, we're going to have to wait for her to clarify that she really means basketball and football because that just doesn't seem right. So we did. And then, the question had to be asked and she actually said it. When she said the words, it was very surprising. It was just so weird. Like, why wouldn't you be happy to announce this? Why wouldn't this be clearer? The whole thing's just been such a mess from the start, and I'm afraid it's going to continue that way, but it was quite a day.
Well, and to give that a little context, the last couple of months, it's been, so up and down, but really mostly down. I mean, for a lot of people, basketball, football, those families, those players, some sports got to play in the fall, but not a lot. I mean, can you put into perspective how much things have changed, even in just the last week? I mean, as you alluded to, there was really no idea that this was coming.
No, it's wild because the numbers aren't any different than the summer and early fall when he wouldn't allow football. So really the only difference is there is a vaccine. Yeah, it's probably a pretty big difference. There's that, and the new administration. And then you think back, I didn't even realize this until like Saturday I was thinking about it. Remember when everybody was debating what Governor Pritzker meant by spring? Because a lot of people thought he meant the IHSA's spring season, which starts in February. And I kept telling people that's ridiculous. Nobody not involved in high school sports considers February spring. That's just not a word anyone would use for spring or for February. But now here we are. He did it in January, late January. No one thinks this is spring, not even the IHSA. So if you think about it, he actually started up earlier than he'd even been saying all along. Even by the rosiest of outlooks, was mid-February. So it was, for someone who'd been so consistent, to see them just change in a dime like that was a real shock, yeah.
You said it's probably going to continue to be a mess a few moments ago, and, I don't necessarily disagree. It's all kind of just we'll figure it out as we go type of deal, and that's what the IHSA is looking at right now, putting together a new spring and now all of a sudden a summer season sports schedule. What have you heard in terms of that from the IHSA, and what are you expecting come Wednesday's announcement?
I have not heard a thing from the IHSA about what that schedule might look like. I know some coaches have been speculating, and I think the general consensus I hear is that people expect basketball to get pushed back in a couple months. Who knows if it'll be a late spring or a really late, early summer type thing. But it doesn't sound like many people think it would be smart for them to start it right now. We've got, as of this morning, 5 of 11 regions are in phase 4. So not even just about half the state is close. And, that's still an indoor sport. And, could be a lot more problems. And I would guess the IHSA doesn't want to start out with problems. It seems like starting out slow and ramping up is probably the way to go. And Craig Anderson kind of alluded to that in the one statement he did give, or what we heard from him on Friday. So I think it would be realistic to expect maybe they'll try and start football when they expect it. That February 15th, practice date, and then games start in early March, and then tack on maybe basketball to when baseball was going to be in the late spring, early summer there. That's my guess. I don't have any inside info on that. It just seems to maybe make the most sense.
It's got to, adding to the complications of everything is that so many regions are in different phases right now. Peoria, our region, just moved to phase 4 about 30 minutes before we hit record. So it's a very fluid situation. I want to switch gears a little bit, though. I want to ask you about reporting on this. And obviously, it's a very sensitive issue. A lot of people really fired up about this. I don't necessarily want to get into the politics of it, but what's it like been, reporting on it and kind of navigating those political waters? Just, you'll fire off a tweet and then the replies will just be, if you have the replies enabled, that is, it'll be a war zone, seemingly.
I have not turned the replies off yet, although I did on Friday call my boss and ask him if he thought it'd be okay if I did, because I was thinking I just don't want to deal with this anymore. It didn't get to that point, thankfully. To answer your question though, it's the worst thing I've ever covered. Nothing's even close. It's been horrible. First time I really have disliked my job. It's been really, really bad. I've gone out of my way. Some people might scoff or laugh at this, to keep my opinion out of it. I haven't tweeted my opinion. I haven't written my opinion, on whether things should open or close or be played or not. I've written that, you need to get a schedule. I said things like that. I said, I don't think it's going to happen. And it's been interesting to watch because of that. Both sides think I'm against them. And it doesn't matter what I put up. Everyone takes their own opinion and hates it for that reason. So I'd almost be better if I just go full one side, because at least then half the people would be easier on me. But I'm used to taking heat from, when you rank basketball teams and pick all state, but this is a worse kind of of world to be in. It's one thing when somebody disagrees on basketball. We all disagree with our friends on sports and stuff, and we're used to dealing with that. And we're used to knowing how to navigate that socially for the most part. But this is a completely different thing. It's not something I ever really wanted for my life, was to spend a lot of time covering highly partisan political issues, but here we are.
Well, you mentioned it. Chicago basketball can probably be a little intense in terms of, people thinking their team's too low, or so-and-so should have been player of the year, and that type of stuff. Just how intense is the Chicago basketball scene? Kind of switching gears to that, a little more fun than politics.
Yeah.
How much more fun or difficult does that make your job?
It makes it difficult. The intensity, I think it's unrivaled. Maybe Texas high school football, I'm sure, from what I see, is pretty insane. But I think a lot of people don't even realize, I've said it before on a lot of interviews, it's too important. High school basketball is too important in Chicago. It's completely out of whack and out of perspective. It does make my job important and exciting or whatever. I never have to worry that somebody's not going to read something or somebody doesn't care. It's way too much to the other side. And things get personal a lot. I've had to file police reports against parents and coaches. It's been a few years now, but things get bad, without a doubt. I had a pretty rough run with Adam Miller, to be truthful, and his family. The end of it's funny because in March that seemed like a big deal. And then all this other stuff happened when, we didn't select him for player of the year. And a lot of people freaked out about that. I think now maybe some people might understand a little bit more why that wasn't the case when you look at DJ Stewart, was what he's already done in college and what Adam Miller has done. Adam Miller just didn't have a great senior year. I made the comment that he was finished 5th in our voting, just based on on his high school season. That's all we cared about. And that wasn't even like controversial to us. That's just what we saw. That's what happened. But because he's an Illinois recruit, it's got to be rough for him too. Just the expectations, what everybody expects. And then to me, it's almost another fraudulent Mr. Basketball we had with him winning that. Same thing happened with Mark Smith. You remember, because of Illinois, he got Mr. Basketball he didn't deserve. And you get all this weight. I don't think it helps the kids. I'm sure they want to win the award, but showing up as Mr. Basketball at Illinois, hello, that's, people expect a lot. And so I think around the state, we really need to look at our Mr. Basketball voting and maybe take the college recruiting aspect out of it and maybe take the hype out and maybe look at someone's actual senior year of high school and vote on that instead of other stuff.
For sure. And we had the chance to see Adam Miller play at the Tournament of Champions last November, or 2 Novembers ago, I guess it would be now. And
yeah.
Packed gym. I mean, just you could tell that, the gym was packed. Obviously, the TOC brings in a good crowd consistently, but they were there for Adam Miller, and those expectations were off the charts. And he's had a good freshman season in Illinois, but
up and down,
but good. Want to shift gears a little bit, though, kind of getting back to the Peoria area, and we talk about the Tournament of Champions. We'll talk about the state championship for a second. Obviously, it's shifting from Peoria to Champaign. Your thoughts on it migrating from the 309 to the 217, and maybe some of your favorite memories covering it in Peoria?
Well, I was really excited when it left Champaign. There were a lot of issues in Champaign with the hotels gouging people and restaurants too full. People couldn't eat, so they'd go home. And it felt like it needed a change. And it felt like Champaign, they've even said it now, they probably took it for granted and that kind of thing. So when it left and moved to Peoria, wow, those first 5 years were amazing. We had great basketball team. It got a great group of teams there early. So the tournaments were great. The stands were packed. The downtown Peoria area seemed like it was built for it. With the hotels there you could walk to, all the restaurants and bars, and it was so much fun. It was such a great little scene down there for so many years. I would drive there on Thursday, leave my car until Sunday when I drove home. I absolutely loved it. Everybody did. It was a huge, huge thrill. And then, 4 classes came, which we won't understate that, but then a lot of things changed in the world. There was a great recession, which impacted, downtown Peoria and all the families from around the state that probably no longer thought staying in a hotel to watch high school basketball was maybe the best use of their, limited income. So all these things happened and it just got really bad. I've taken a lot of heat in Peoria for the last few years, but I mean, somebody had to say it. The thing's dead. It's horrible. It was really, really bad. There were no fans, basically. There was I would walk out on Thursday after shoot around and it's like, oh, let's go hang out and have some fun. Not anymore in Peoria. There was nowhere to go. Instead, it was get in your car and drive to East Peoria to find somewhere to get some food and bring back to your hotel in the graveyard that was downtown Peoria. It became pretty depressing. And so it was time to leave for sure. I hope Champaign does a good job. I think we'll get at least a 1 year. Well, this is pre-COVID. I thought we'd have at least a 1 year bump of excitement and a lot of people coming. We'll see what happens. I think there's a lot of long-term worries for high school sports right now that we haven't even gotten to talk about yet. Once people stop going to things, they don't always go back. And we've seen dwindling crowds in a lot of places for a lot of things even before this. So I'm a little worried. I'm just hoping that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's certainly concerning, not only for high school sports, but probably college athletics as well. Looking at our school, Bradley, a mid-major school, it's not going to be guaranteed that people buy season tickets. They're not exactly the University of Illinois, to compare Carver Arena to the State Farm Center. I've got one last question for you. It's kind of a fun one. So often people from Chicago talk about downstate. First, what's your definition of downstate? How far south do you have to go to be in downstate? And 2, who are some of the best players and teams you've seen from that region?
Yeah, it's funny. I was at hoops a year or two ago with a bunch of reporters, a lot of them from Southern Illinois. And we talked about the whole downstate thing. I mean, I had always assumed downstate was to me, at the very least, south of Kankakee. At the least. I mean, in my mind, it would be south of Central Illinois. You know, I considered Central Illinois its own thing, so I would go below Champaign and Peoria. And I felt pretty safe in calling that downstate. But I learned that night that I was totally wrong. And pretty much no one wants to be called downstate Illinois. I think basically that's the safest thing to do, is to never use the term. Southern Illinois, nobody cares if you call them that. That's cool. Blah, blah, blah. But I think it's crazy. And the newspapers up here do it. Sometimes does it. They call like Rockford downstate Illinois, which to me is mind blowing. It's like, and I think it's led to a lot of people not understanding where Rockford is, like on the map, or like the Quad Cities. They always call the Quad Cities downstate. And it's like, what are you talking about there? So that's been really confusing to me. So yeah, you're never going to see me write or say downstate. I will just always refer to specifically where they are, whether it's Quad Cities, Central, Southern, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I was in high school that whole manual, 94 to 97, that run there. And, you know, those teams were, I think it's interesting because I don't want to down them, but it's not like this was NBA ready talent other than maybe Frankie Williams. I thought he was mind-blowingly spectacular. But otherwise, they were just a ruthlessly smart and effective high school team that was full of those guys that you hate when they're on the other team and love when they're on yours. And they just bullied everybody for 4 years through the state. They were really impressive. Darius Miles, you know, from East St. Louis was mind-blowing to me. I love Joey Range from Galesburg. I thought he was I still think he's one of the best high school players I've ever seen. I rewatched that Galesburg Whitney Young game from 98 a few weeks ago. And I think that Galesburg team is one of the better in state history, but because they lost to one of the best, I don't think they're remembered as highly as they should be, or as highly regarded. I think that Galesburg team is state champions 9 out of 10 years of every year, you know, we've ever had. And so I think it's a shame they didn't quite get that credit.
For sure. And Michael, I don't have any further questions. Just what?
No, I'm not laughing at you.
Oh man. No, just wanted to thank you again for coming on and, you know, chatting a little hoops. Obviously such a crazy world out there right now, and, you know, a lot going on for you. It means a lot that you're taking the time to talk with us.
No, anytime, guys. Yeah, it's great. Good luck with everything. It'll be fun to watch how Clutch Sports carries on over the next few years. Hopefully get some actual sports to cover.
Yeah, we'll be keeping our fingers crossed. Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure. Tell everybody where we can find your work. Suntimes.com. You know, it's mainly just the Chicago area. It's 400 high schools. It's more than enough. But we do cover kind of the larger issues when we have to. Then I'm on Twitter. It's Michael S. O'Brien. At Twitter, it's at Michael S. O'Brien, I guess. Those are the two places. And it really does help. You know, I would support your local paper. You know, check out the Sun-Times wherever you are around the state. You know, I'm sure it's not too much money for a subscription to the Journal-Star, or, you know, wherever you happen to be, because those things are so important. And they're the only people that care about your high school sports and your local sports. And if you don't do that, it's really going to be gone. We 100% agree. Our good friends at the PJ Star, they've supported us, and we try to do our best to support them. Well, Michael, thank you again for taking the time, and for everybody watching, thank you for tuning in to the 6th edition of Catching Up with Clutch Sports Media. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.